Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Creative Academy, your go-to source for accountability, coaching, and community for writers. I'm Crystal Stranaghan, writing romance as CJ Hunt, and today we are chatting about audiobooks with the head of product for Findaway Voices, Will Dages. Welcome, Will. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Many questions for you, all of the questions. And but first question, maybe most importantly, is we want to know a little bit about you and how you came to be working for Findaway.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me. This is awesome opportunity. I'm glad to be here. So I have been at Findaway for about 6.5 years. The company itself is about 15 years old now. And it all started when I started dating my now wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. And I got in her car and I saw in her center console this little device. And I asked her what that was. And she said, "Oh, that's a Playaway. I listen to my audiobooks on there." I said, "Oh, I've never heard of that before." She said, "Yeah, they're a local company. They're just up the road and they make these things and they circulate in libraries. My students love them." She was an English teacher, so she was just reading as much as she could. And so that was my introduction to Playaway, and I ended up looking them up and I was unhappy with my job at the time, and they had an opening that fit, and so I applied, and I found myself hired there a couple months later. And the company culture is really what attracted me there. It's a very open, fun culture, a lot of innovation, really fast-paced, high accountability, and I really thrive in that environment. So it's been a great fit for me. And I started in UX, user experience design, and I did some development work. I did some iOS work. I did some web development work. Then I ended up in management for a little bit. And then we started Findaway Voices about 18 months ago. And when that was ramping up, it was just such an exciting project. Never worked with independent authors before. I'd really been on the library side and worked with publishers and big retailers for projects, but I'd never done anything with independent authors, self-published community, narrators. And so it pulled me in, and I haven't looked back since. It's been a really fun and rewarding project to work on.
Cool. Yeah, it certainly hit the scene and sort of blew up all over the place. So yeah, I went from not ever having heard of Findaway to suddenly messages coming from all these different platforms and all the different places that just sort of hits that tipping point on the radar. So yeah, really excited to be working with you guys. And especially there's so much buzz in the author community right now about audiobooks, and it's sort of the current hot topic, I think. And, again, the emails are coming from everywhere. People are diving into the audiobook world. So what do you see in terms of the numbers? How quickly are sales growing, and how's that comparing to growth in print or digital books right now?
Well, one of the best resources for that is the Audio Publishers Association. Every year they put out a report with hard numbers and facts. And for a long time, as long as I can remember, at least the 4 or 5 years that I've been in this space, the audiobook industry has been the fastest growing segment of the publishing industry, and it continues to be on a roll. So as far as numbers, we saw about a 22%, 22% increase in audiobook sales for 2017. That's 2016 to 2017. A 30% increase between 2015 and 2016. The numbers aren't out yet for 2018 because they're still in it. But it's growing really, really fast. And I don't have as much of a handle on the ebook market just because I focus so much on the audiobook market, and we don't process any ebook sales. So I don't have any firsthand data to compare against. But anecdotally, I know I have a handful of customers who have told me that audiobook sales have eclipsed their ebook sales in terms of dollars revenue, not necessarily unit sales. Audiobooks revenue pulls in $10 to $20 more per sale than an ebook. They're just priced a lot higher. So the dollars are going to eclipse the units a lot faster.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you think, for authors thinking about doing this, particularly indie authors where you foot the bill for the whole shebang and you're in charge of managing all the things? And so for those authors looking to take on that one more thing, what would you say are the benefits of having an audiobook edition? What are they going to see change as a result of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We see I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I was trying to glance at my notes and answer it at the same time. And I know this one. I don't need to look at my notes. There's a lot of customers out there who are listeners only, and so you're really opening up a whole new segment of the market when you have an audiobook. Audible has done a great job at making audiobooks really popular, and there is a segment of listeners who are just voracious listeners, and they will binge listen during their commutes and during times where other forms of reading are just not as convenient. So you're really opening up the market to a whole new segment of listeners. The other benefit is the revenue, right? So the audiobooks are higher cost, and that means more money in your pocket for every sale. If you're going to spend dollars to market to a listener or a reader, you want that audiobook sale more than the ebook sale because it's going to be more dollars in your pocket. The other thing, and this is not my favorite reason, but it is, you can't ignore it, is when somebody goes to the product page for your book and they see audiobook, ebook, and print book, it feels more real. It feels more professional, like this is a thing. And that alone is not a reason to do an audiobook, but it's definitely a nice benefit of you see this portfolio on the product page of all the formats and somebody goes, okay, this is legit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for some of us, we have to make these tough choices with our ebooks of exclusive or wide, and how are we going to handle that? So it's also a really nice way to have the story be deliverable to people outside of the sort of Amazon exclusive world, and have more readers be able to enjoy your stories that way. So that's another nice side effect. And definitely discoverability goes up when you have those multiple editions. There's so many more ways for people to find themselves back in your world, which is really valuable. You are the brand as the indie author. So having more catchment areas, more ways for people to get caught in your story web, the better, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. And if you think about the rise of the ebooks and the rise of the audiobooks, right? If you've ever tried to read an ebook on your phone, it's not a great experience. And the US, the e-reader market has really caught on and done very well. But if you look internationally, if you look to developing markets, there is not a great saturation of e-readers, but everybody has a cell phone. And when you're pitting formats one against another in a market like that, and reading and independent authors are starting to get a hold there, you're looking at the difference in, do I read on my phone or do I listen on my phone? And listening is just going to be the better experience all the time. So we're seeing a lot of really exciting growth and potential in some markets, really establishing themselves as audio first and ebooks being secondary in some international markets. That's not the case in the US. But there is, the explosive growth that we're seeing right now is in international markets, and that's part of the reason that's being fueled.
Cool. Now, one of the things that sort of held me back from doing audiobook editions in the beginning was that I read all these articles and I had heard all these figures bandied about that, you were looking at a minimum of $300 an hour to even think about producing an audiobook. Now, would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, so it ranges, pretty widely. But we see a good majority of narrators in our system being between $150 to $300 per finished hour. So when you're paying for an audiobook, you're paying for the finished narration that's done. So it doesn't matter if it takes a narrator 1 hour to make an hour of finished audio or 10 hours. You're paying for that finished product, and nobody can do it in 1 hour. We're seeing like 2 or 3 hours is about as efficient as anybody can get to getting one finished hour of audio. But that's what you're paying for there. And so you basically just have to calculate how long is your book. It's about 9,000 words ends up being an hour of finished audio. And then you're looking between $150 to $300 per finished hour for a really good quality book. There are some narrators who will charge less than that. There are some narrators who will charge more than that. But generally speaking, we see a lot of great narrations happen between that range.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that maybe surprised me the most in a really pleasant way was the quality of the auditions that I was hearing at that sort of $150 to $300 range was so strong. And the finished products, for the draft review sections have been amazing. And I think I've worked now with 8 different narrators, maybe.
Awesome.
something like that, and just been blown away by all of them. And these are professional voice actors, and they, you know, they can do all these amazing voices and all of this stuff that we just could never do, which sort of segs me into the next question, which is around do your own or don't do your own. And this is a huge debate. And I think maybe the answer is different depending on if you're fiction or nonfiction. But for those people debating recording their own rather than paying somebody, what are the things that you think they should be considering when they try to make that decision?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I think let's start with nonfiction versus fiction, right? So if you are a nonfiction author, especially if you have a speaking career or you make your money doing events, you should be recording your own audiobook. And if you don't have the setup or don't want to, you should be hiring somebody to help you. Studio time, an editor, a producer, whatever you need to get that done, and sound really good quality. Because you want the people who show up to your events to already have listened to you in their ears for 8 or 10 hours before you show up. And then you're going to feel like family all of a sudden. It's a great, great brand builder for you. For everyone else, if you are thinking about narrating your own audiobook, one, I would check out the technical specifications that you're going to need to hit. If you do podcasting, if you do anything with audio, you probably won't be too intimidated by it. Otherwise, they can be kind of tricky to hit those specs. Regardless of that, you could still hire an engineer or a producer to help you through those technical specifications. So then you have to think about how difficult is it going to be to maintain these character voices for 8 hours. When you're doing it, when you're reading to your kids, it's easy to make voices for that 10 minutes of reading time or 20 minutes of reading time. But to sustain that for an 8-hour book, it's going to take you 16 to 24 hours if you're a professional of reading time to get to that. It's easy to underestimate how fatigued your voice can get when you're trying to make some interesting voices and keep them consistent from the beginning to the end. One thing that I really like to encourage with authors who are thinking about doing their own is to do some blind testing, right? So I'm in marketing and I love doing A/B tests and getting data to prove results. And the audition process on Findaway Voices happens to be free, and there's no commitment at that point. So what you can do is you can take a 3-minute part of your book, perform it yourself, then go through the audition process. Let us cast a few narrators who we think would fit well, have them do the audition with that same 3-minute portion of text, and then take all of those and deliver it to a couple listeners or fans who may not know your voice already, and then have them choose. And they might choose you, and that can be fantastic. Otherwise, you might get some harsh feedback that can be a little bit of a reality check before you waste a lot of time into this production that people might not really enjoy. The best marketing tip for an audiobook is to have a great quality product. Just like with everything else, if you don't have a high quality audiobook, none of the marketing tips are going to work. So the audition process is free, and it's a great way to test out if this is a good idea or not.
That's an awesome idea. And one of the things I found really helpful too is to go into your genre category on one of the audio stores and listen to every single preview that you can in any of the sort of well-ranked books or well-rated books in your genre, so that you know what the genre expectations are. Just like covers, just like editing, and whether or not you have a happily ever after in your story, all those things, there are expectations that those listeners will have. And if you are not meeting them, they're going to be disappointed, and you're going to be really sad because your product is not going to sell the way you want it to.
That can be a great way to find a narrator too. So one of the most underutilized marketing techniques also is forgetting that your narrator also has fans. And fans follow narrators just like they do authors. And they know that these narrators are pleasant to listen to, and they pick the kind of projects that they like listening to too. So it's a great idea. If you see this one narrator is just crushing it across, your genre, you might want to reach out to them and see, okay, what's your rate? Do you have availability for this project? Are you interested? Because they can bring a lot of fans over with them.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first public tweet of any of my audiobooks was actually the narrator from the first one sharing it on Twitter. And I was like, what? I didn't even know we were live. This is so exciting. So yeah, definitely the doubling up on the sort of creative input as well as doubling up on the marketing side is fabulous. Now, for people who are still thinking, oh my goodness, in the math I'm doing in my head right now is it's going to cost this much times this many words, which equals this many hours, which equals this many dollars. Well, there's this other option over here at ACX where I can just do a revenue share. So How do you, what are some pros, cons of those different ways, or why would we choose to pay more upfront?
Sure. So let me start with what you have when you're finished with the audiobook, right? So when you finish an audiobook with Findaway Voices, you pay for it all up front, and generally we're seeing, about $1,500 is the mental math there. If you want, you can go to findawayvoices.com/pricing, and we have a little calculator where you enter your number of words and you can do the slider with the rate and see what the estimate will be. And then at ACX, what they do is they do a royalty share plan where there's nothing up front. And then you and the narrator split the royalties 50-50. But you are also signing an exclusivity contract for 7 years with the narrator at that point. So if you pay for your production up front with Findaway Voices, you can do whatever you want with that audiobook afterwards. It is yours. You have paid for it. You do not have to distribute with us. You don't have to go wide. You can take it to ACX yourself and go exclusive. But it's up to you at that point. If you go through the royalty share program, there's no costs up front, but you are locking yourself into 7 years of exclusivity through ACX with just 3 retailers: Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. And those are the only 3 places your audiobook can be sold. You cannot burn it onto CDs. You cannot do anything else with it except keep it there. And it makes sense, right? Because the narrator is taking a chance on your audiobook for no upfront payment. They're doing this 20, 30, 40 hours of work for nothing. And then they're splitting the royalties with you 50-50 for the next 7 years. And if ACX doesn't have visibility into where all of those sales are happening, they can't accurately make sure that it's being split down the middle. So the mechanic makes perfect sense. But 7 years is a really long time to be locked into exclusivity. And obviously we believe in wide distribution in the audiobook market here. And 7 years, and if we just look at the past 1 year, there has been a huge change in the audiobook market, and we think that is going to continue with more and more changes all the time. So I would be very cautious about signing a 7-year exclusivity contract and giving up half of your royalties for those 7 years as well.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, for me, I think the biggest deciding factor in looking was when I started thinking about the experimentation that we do with ebooks and with free stuff that we give away as a loss leader to get people hooked on a series. And, one of the things I really like to do is be able to give away a book occasionally to the people who've been on my list for months or years, following along and being supportive. And, I like to do stuff like that. So when I started asking questions like, okay, well, can I post a free preview of this on my website? And I would get, sure, it's yours. You can do what you want with it. Oh, okay. That's fun. What else could I do? Well, what if we had one that was totally free to give away? How would that work? And, just looking at audiobooks in not so much of a locked down kind of a way, but in an author property sense. And so for me, that was the biggest deciding factor was, okay, I want to be able to do whatever I want with it. And I don't know what that is yet, which means I need something that's going to give me the freedom to change my business model, to flex what I'm doing with a certain book based on where I'm at in my career or what that series does. You have no idea what's going to happen down the line. So yeah, if we look 7 years ago, I started indie publishing before it was cool. Even 7 years ago, it was still not really that cool. And we couldn't even begin to imagine what the markets look like now at that point, or what the tools looked like, or, any of these things. So yeah, I think having the ability to flex along with what's changing is so important. Are you seeing a difference on your end in terms of differences in return on investment with standalone books versus a series, or fiction versus nonfiction? Like, are there any types of books that lend themselves better to the audio sales?
Well, it depends on what platform you're on, right? When we see the wide distribution, we distribute to 30 different platforms, and different kinds of content do well in different markets and different segments and different business models. So I'll hit a couple of the most popular ones, right? So series are always great. Series do really well on audio, just like they do in ebooks. There are binge listeners who will just listen to one after another until they're done. Bundling of series works really, really well on Audible. So when you're thinking about Audible's business model, every month you get a token, right? And you can exchange that token for a book, and you've paid $15 for that token. So you want to spend that token to get as much value as you can for that. And so if you're looking at spending that token on a 2-hour audiobook versus a 20-hour audiobook, the longer audiobook's going to win all day, every day. So we see bundling of series doing really, really well on Audible. and a couple of the other credit subscription-based models. Standalone books can do a little bit better on some of the pure subscription models like Scribd and Playster, where it's more like the Netflix model where you're paying $9-10 a month and you get unlimited access to audiobooks. There's no purchase barrier there. You can just pick up whatever you want and start listening. There's some interesting, as far as the genre breaks down on fiction, we're seeing romance really leading the pack there, with mystery thriller next. And then kind of sci-fi and fantasy being not a distant third, but there's a little bit of a gap there between the second and third place. And then nonfiction, we're seeing health and wellness doing really well, like really crushing it on the audio side. My theory there is it's a great commute and workout material. Listening while you're running, listening while you're driving to and from work to kind of center you. And then also personal development and leadership are the number 2 and 3 subgenres there.
Yeah, nice. And so when we're talking about to hop back to the licensing kind of stuff for a second and what we sign. So let's say I sign up with you guys, you produce the book for me, we're distributing it, it's all going well. What if, say, some traditional publisher comes and wants to buy out all the rights for my series and I need to negotiate that, but it means I have to pull everything? Can I do that? Like, what is the contract term, or what have we signed away? Does Findaway own the rights? How does that work?
Right. So we are not a publisher. We don't assume the rights to any work. So you 100% keep the rights to your book. We don't take any of that just because you're producing or distributing through us. And we also have no minimum terms. So you're not literally none. If you want to distribute it today and pull it later today, you can. There is no minimum term. Now, in reality, it takes a little bit longer to distribute than a day. So, you get it.
There's a little bit of lag time, just like ebook land. When you hit unpublish, it doesn't happen like instantly. There is a bit of a lag.
Yes. So now we are a little bit at the mercy of some of the downstream agreements. The only one of note is ACX. While they don't require you to sign an exclusive 7-year term, there is a 7-year term where you have to keep it on their platform for 7 years. So even non-exclusively, you cannot take it down. We have had luck and success with transferring it to a different account. So you sign up for ACX, hey, we'll transfer the book onto yours. You're not taking it down from Audible's platform, but we are transferring it. Right. And that's something we can facilitate. It doesn't happen too often. But other than ACX, which is the Audible, Amazon, iTunes, there are no minimum terms anywhere else.
Right. And there are rumblings and rumors that the only way right now to get into iBooks is through ACX and Audible, but that may not be the case forever. So there's definitely some fluidity that we're hearing about in the market, potentially. Of course, nothing is official yet, so we're all waiting with bated breath to find out what's going to happen. But it is nice to know that there's options, so that you can make a decision now, and it's not like, in high school they tell you got to pick your career for the whole rest of your life, and you sort of melt down because who wants to choose the whole rest of your life when you're 17? Sort of the same thing. Some people are like, what if I go all in on this and I change my mind? What do I do? But knowing that's okay.
Our whole philosophy. We don't have all the answers. We don't have all the marketing techniques figured out, but we've built our platform to give you the flexibility to experiment. And the more you want to experiment, the more tools we'll give you. We'll help you find the right answers. And then we're watching intensely to find out what the most successful things that people are trying, and trying to broadcast that out to everybody else. If I can make a little segue into one of the experiments that I'm really hot on right now, is really short form content, like 15-minute short stories and 1-hour novellas, which traditionally have never done well in audio because of the dominance of Audible. And what I was talking about earlier about the credit worthiness, right? Who's going to pick the 15-minute audiobook for their credit? But now that we have these wide distribution platforms and platforms that are letting you set your list price, so you can actually control what you will be paid off of, the price you'll be paid off, your royalty off of. We're seeing people bundle together 4 short stories into just a 1-hour block of audio, paying a narrator $200-300 to produce this. And then they're splitting it back up, and now they have 5 things to sell. They have 4 short stories and 1 bundle of the 4 short stories. And selling those for 99 cents. These are like character backstories. So you have a series, and in between each series, you have a 15-minute short story about some side adventure that a character had, or some encounter between two characters that happen. It's not critical to the series, but it's supplemental. And either one, giving those away for free as sign up for my email newsletter and get this exclusive audiobook. For testing the waters in audio, maybe you don't have the full books in audio, and you just do these interstitial short stories between the series to push your audience there, and then see where the distribution is. You're pushing this to 30 different platforms. Is everybody going to Audible? Is everybody going to Scribd? Where is your distribution happening? And then you can know where to target the full length audiobooks as far as platforms go. Or just selling them for 99 cents and having them be a really easy thing for people to pick up and binge. Both ways. From I listened to the full series, I want a little extra, or hey, what's this for 99 cents? Oh, I like those characters. I'd like to go back and read the full series. That kind of experimentation wasn't possible when everybody was paying $15 for a credit. But in some of these other platforms, it opens up experimentation, and I love seeing creative applications like that.
Yeah, that's so fun. And I think from an accessibility point of view, financially as well, for those indies of us who need to get some products out there, but we maybe can't invest, if you've got a bit of a back catalog of novellas or, short stories or whatever. So almost all my stuff right now is either all of it is a short story or novella. I think the longest one is 30,000 words, which will be about 3.5 hours or something in the end. Mm-hmm. So they're all price pointed down and bundleable and have lots of options there. So I think that is really exciting. And a lot of our members are writing short stories and looking for ways to expand a series or connect other pieces or do that world building piece. So being able to be smart about it, pick, write things to be roughly an hour of audio on purpose. If 9,000 words is your target, then look at what you're doing as a sort of multiplier of that. And so just to be clear, if we do like 12,000 words, does that immediately default to 2 hours?
No, there is a minimum of 1 hour, right? So to just engage a narrator, they need to know they're making at least 1 unit of their per finished hour rate. So that's why I was saying 4 short stories bundled into an hour. If you do a 30-minute project, you're still going to get billed for the full hour. So might as well fill up that hour. But after that, we prorate down to the second. So, if you're 1 hour and 1 second, you're going to be, for a $200 per finished hour narrator, you're going to be paying $200.60 or,
yeah.
Not good, but you get it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's talk for a minute about what the actual production process looks like. So sure. Let's say I come to you, I say, make me an audiobook. Now what happens?
Sure. So the first thing you do is you upload your manuscript so that we can calculate the length and get a feel for the book. And then we have you answer a questionnaire, basically like a dating profile, so that we can match up your book with a narrator. And so we're going to ask a whole bunch of questions about what is the tone of the book. We want to know a little bit about the genre and the subgenre. Are the characters' voices in your head gritty? Are they sensual? Do you need a specific language, a dialect? Don't just say Southern. We'll point you towards Texas Southern or South Carolina Southern or all the different languages and dialects. And basically, all of those answers go to a casting team. We have kind of a mixture of art and science that helps narrow down some narrator choices. So when a narrator signs up, they do the same thing about what are your skills, what are your languages and dialects, and they upload samples. And our casting team kind of mashes these together. We say, okay, well, this needs a female narrator, so we can easily filter out half of the list. And then we use really the judgment of the casting team to narrow it down to 5 to 10 choices. So this is a big difference. If you've used ACX, it's an open marketplace. You get to do all the sorting and filtering and searching yourself to find the right voice. At Findaway Voices, that kind of open marketplace is not there. But what we do is we take a more curated approach so that we kind of zoom you right to the semifinal round. And we use our casting team to just present you with a digestible 5 to 10 narrators, listen to their samples, don't be overwhelmed. And then you can choose, as many of those as you want to audition, which means they're going to actually perform a segment of your book. It takes about a week to get an audition back generally. And from there, you can kind of pit the auditions against each other and make a final choice. Or you can say, okay, these weren't quite right. Here's my feedback to the casting team. Would you guys get me another casting list? So, and we'll do that, until we find one, or we say, we just don't have the right narrator for you right now. Any questions about that, or should we go right into production?
That part's pretty solid, I think. So once we've picked somebody, and one thing as a tip for those watching that I've found really helpful is sometimes I'll get a casting list where I like maybe 4 of the people and any of them are fabulous. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I know that this book is coming down the pipeline and this is the person for that book. So I will download the little narrator reels and I'll mark them for future books if I know. And then that way, when I'm going to put in my request for the next book, I can say, please cast this, but also include these 3 names if they're currently available in the timeline I'm looking for. And then that way, you're not just hoping they'll come up again in the mix, and it actually helps guide what else is going on too. So
that's a great tip. I love that. And because we have humans behind the scenes here, they'll see that, and it's not like the computer's going to skip over it or anything. So that's a fantastic tip. And we do take in, when we're making these recommendations, we take things into account, like, have we already overbooked them? We don't want to suggest somebody who's just not going to be available for the next year. We take a whole bunch of stuff into account. So that's great. And then I should mention that we have a $49 casting fee. So this is on top of the actual production. If we're the ones who do the work to find you that perfect narrator, we'll charge a $49 casting fee. If we don't find the right narrator, we don't charge it. If you bring your own narrator, we don't charge it. And if you come through Draft to Digital or Smashwords, we just waive that and do it as a courtesy. So if you have an account at Smashwords or Draft to Digital, start your project from there and bring it in, and there will be no casting fee. But again, that only applies if we really find the right narrator and we move into production and we charge it at the end. So, okay, so you found the right narrator and you want to start the production. At this point, we know how long your book is. We know exactly what the narrator's rate is. So we'll be able to put together an estimate for you. Obviously, the 9,000 words per hour is an estimate. Some people read faster or slower. So we give you kind of a full project estimate, and then we send contracts out to both sides. So we are in the middle here. It's not just you and the narrator hoping each other delivers and pays on time. We are standing in the middle. So, for example, if you contract with us and the narrator does not deliver, you are not on the hook for paying them. We are the middleman. And if the author decides to stiff us and walk away and the narrator has done all this work, we protect the narrator by paying them their rate too. So both parties sign a contract with us and we manage the production from end to end. And that just keeps both parties safe and happy.
Which is
it also incentivizes us to make sure things are moving fluidly and that communication is good and that we're keeping an eye on the production from beginning to end. So basically what happens next is you choose a 15-minute extended sample for the narrator to perform. And this is the time that the author is really going to spend time giving detailed feedback about the production before we send the narrator off to go do the rest of the book. So we don't want these nitpicks to kind of come back when the narrator's already done a ton of work. We do this 15-minute sample, and this is where you say, okay, that accent wasn't quite right. Can you try it more like this? We also deliver all the production notes at that time to the narrator as well. So this is character notes and backstories, motivations, especially if it's a fantasy book or sci-fi and you have some crazy character names and you want them pronounced in a very specific way, don't assume that the narrator will interpret it the same way that you do. So we ask you to, give a pronunciation guide, and we have some templates to help through this process. And then when that sample comes back, that 15-minute sample, and you are good to go, the author says, yes, this is what I want you to continue like. The narrator takes that as their direction and goes and records the rest of the book. As they finish chapters or when they're all done, they will upload the final files back to Findaway Voices website, and you'll be notified that there are some audio files ready for your review. These are delivered ready to listen. So this is, the narrator is responsible for proofing, editing, mixing, having them in the final form that is ready to distribute. So as the author, you are not responsible for mastering these or hoping that they're in the right format so that they distribute to all the audiobook retailers. This is something that these narrators are professionals, and they're up to date with all the specs before we start the production too. And everything is delivered ready to listen. So at that point, it's really up to the author. Some authors love to be hands-off and say, great, it's done. I'll pay for it and distribute it. And some like to go through with a fine-tooth comb and listen to every second and make detailed notes, which is, totally fine too. as long as the notes aren't on the style or things that are supposed to be set in that first 15 minutes. If you find a misspoken word or a sentence that's missing, it doesn't happen often, but if you do find that, we'll go back to the narrator, we'll get it fixed. There's no extra charge for that. We want to make sure that these files are completely ready and ready to listen. So once you approve it at the end there, once you've heard the whole production, that's when you pay Findaway Voices. And it's just a simple credit card form on our website. And then that also triggers payment to the narrator through us. And then we launch you right into the distribution options. So if you wanted to download all the files and do whatever you wanted with them at that point, that's totally fine. As soon as you pay for it, those files are yours. And like I said earlier, we're not a publisher. We don't assume rights. So you can do whatever you'd want with them. But we do make it really easy to distribute wide if that's what you want to do. And it's just a series of checkboxes on a page. And you can get some of the details for all the distributors. You can see what business model they operate under and whether they specifically target the retail market or library market. We're about half and half, well, 2/3, 1/3. We have 11 library partners and about 20 retail partners all over the world. Then you hit submit and we take care of the rest. And we make sure that those files are packaged up in 30 different formats that each of those retailers want them delivered in. And we send them off. And within 2 to 3 weeks, your audiobook is for sale everywhere.
Cool. And it is so magical when you get that email and it has all the links in it and it says your book is in all these places.
Yep.
Okay, a couple questions.
We also recently, I'm going to publish the blog post today or tomorrow, but we also recently launched real-time sales reporting for about 10 of our distribution partners. So we don't have the data feeding real-time yet for everybody, and we won't be able to for everybody, but right now about 10 of the retailers, you can see real-time sales data as it flows in. So if somebody buys through Baker and Taylor, Biblioteca, Nook, eStories, within 60 seconds, that sale shows up right in your Findaway Voices dashboard.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
2 questions around production. So
yes.
One of the things people are asking us about a lot is, can they add music and sound effects and sort of make it a production in that way? And so, what is the official acceptability policy on that? I know there's some questions or some limitations from the different platforms about what they accept in an audiobook file.
Yes. So first of all, you'll need to own the rights to all the music or sound effects. You can't just use a popular song and put it in there. And then, as far as who will accept it with music, ACX will reject it. So everywhere else is pretty lenient on it, but ACX will reject any music as extraneous noise, and they will kick it back. So if you want music in your audiobooks, we'll have to we can do this for you. We can help make 2 versions of it. One with the music, one without. We'll submit the one without to ACX. We'll submit the one with music to everywhere else. And it's up to you whether you want to market that differently as the music version and put a banner on the cover image to make it more special or marketable. But yeah, we don't have a whole lot of people experimenting with that right now. I think it's an interesting direction to go. It's unfortunate. That Audible will, ACX will reject it, and it can't be an Audible, which is a big slice of the market, especially for, the retail market. But it's interesting. It's an interesting idea, and I'd like to see more experimentation with that. If anybody wants to do it and wants to submit one version to ACX and one version, with music to everywhere else, just contact our support team, and we'll help you get set up with that.
Cool. And if we can segue into the Authors Direct Store option, which also allows you to sell anything you want directly to your readers. I'm so excited to do like a director's cut audio on one of the stories where I can doctor it all up and have some fun. So, it just removes all of those rules and lets you price it whatever you want and put it wherever you want. So, for people who don't know what Authors Direct is, which is probably most of the world at this point, since it's brand spanking new, can you give us a little tour of what that is and how it works and why we're so excited about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Authors Direct is a platform that we are piloting right now with just a select few authors who are, some of the most adventurous and best experimenters in the industry. And basically where this came about is we consistently were hearing 2 pieces of feedback from a lot of authors. 1, I want a better royalty rate for my audiobooks. And 2, I want direct access to my customers. So if somebody buys book 1, 2, 3, and 4, when book 5 is released, I want to send them an email. And there's just no retailers out there that do that right now, which kind of blows my mind a little bit, because that's like a guaranteed sale. And whoever gets there first is going to win some big money, right? But authors also want to directly market to these people, with not just book 5, but this is a great customer, and I have another series and all that. So we built Authors Direct as a way for authors to have a storefront that can sell audiobooks. And basically, we just take care of the tech and the taxes behind the scenes. So we are the merchant of record, which means we are on the hook for all the taxes and figuring out all of the VAT taxes and international stuff. We're just US and Canada only for the pilot right now, but we do have plans to expand beyond that. And then the royalty rate is 70% of net for the author. So we take out the transaction fees and then we split it 70-30. And then we also have an iOS and Android platform that is a really great listening experience for your customers to listen to. So right now you can sell your audiobooks direct, right? You can use something like PayHip even that takes care of the taxes for you. But what you end up delivering to your customers is either one big long MP3 file or a zip folder full of MP3 files. And it's not a great experience. There's not a great way to load that into a good audiobook experience. There's some audio players, but audiobook experiences have speed control and some of the back forward 15 seconds and some other things like that are really nice. So we give a really great listening experience to the consumer, the listener, and we take care of all the tech and taxes on the storefront side. And we're using Shopify behind the scenes on that so that we're not building our own e-commerce platform and chasing our tail on features. It's one of the best e-commerce platforms out there and gives you a lot of flexibility to sell under your brand. So that's the other thing.
Canadian, just for the record.
And Canadian, yes. We just
yeah. Which we love.
And we just launched sales in Canada too. So that's double awesome. But basically the way it works is I as a consumer come to CJ's store and I buy an audiobook from CJ, which means I'm opting into CJ's mailing list, not Findaway's mailing list, CJ's. Yeah. And then I'm being delivered that audiobook for listening in the Authors Direct app. And if I go to somebody else's store, I'm also listening to that same audiobook in the Authors Direct app. So it's actually the first time that the place where you listen has been decoupled from the retailer that's selling it, which is kind of interesting too. And it's another part of the experiment. And it's just it's an experiment. We're learning all the time. We're making mistakes and muddling our way through it. But we're also seeing some really exciting initial learnings, and we're excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, and I have to say, as one of the lucky people who gets to help test all of this, it has been just a really good glimpse at behind the scenes at how Findaway operates, that you're in contact with real people. And whenever I ask a question, I either get an answer that's nicely explained and is very clear, or I get a, well, no one's asked us that yet, but yeah, let's talk about this. And generally that's followed up with a, sure, let's make it happen. So it's been really, really fun just to kind of get to know the people who are behind all of that, and also to see a company responding to actual individual authors. I've worked with a lot of the different companies through the publishing process, and that is not an experience that you get. I even got a package in the mail when I first book launched, which had some lucky writing socks in it with Findaway Voices on them. So, it's the little things that make it a really nice working experience, which is really important, because when you're launching into a new format and a whole new world of publishing things, and it's pretty easy to find yourself sort of smashing your head against a tech support wall that is really like a form letter that doesn't answer the question you asked, and it's totally demoralizing and really hard if you're especially not a technical person. So it's been a really good experience, I have to say. So full bonus marks on that side of things to you guys and the team. That's been really awesome. And there are so many exciting things happening, and I know you can't tell us about all of them, but is there anything else you can reveal to give us a glimpse into the future of audiobooks, etc.?
Well, let's talk about international just a little bit, because I mentioned this before. This is one of the best parts of going wide, and I like to call this the Hasselhoff effect. So if you're familiar with David Hasselhoff, he had a great movie career in the U.S., right? But he is a rock star in the music industry in Germany. They love him there. And it's a great way to explain if you stay in your lane and you stay with what's familiar, you don't know where all the opportunities are. So we're seeing some really explosive growth internationally. And if you think about it, English is the second language for so many languages and so many cultures. And a great way to learn a language is to be immersed in it. And one of the great ways to be immersed in it is with an audiobook. So we're seeing, even in countries like India, Germany, the Netherlands, all the Scandinavian countries, France, Germany, they're all really hungry for English language content. Oh, and like Mexico City. So one of the newest retailers that we have is called Beek, and they're headquartered in Mexico City, and it's BEEK, and they're basically Goodreads for Latin America. So they're this big book review platform. They have massive adoption. I have a couple stats here. They have 2 million monthly visitors. Their users are making 130,000 book reviews a month, and they claim that they have 20 times more Spanish book reviews than Amazon does in total. Like, they are huge, and I had never heard of them before this year, and you probably have never heard of them either. But guess what? They're selling audiobooks now, and they're selling Findaway Voices audiobooks. And we're looking at these markets that just have unbelievable adoption and so much potential. And I don't know which ones of them will play out, which ones will be big and which ones won't. But the international potential right now is so exciting. And when you go wide, you have the ability to experiment in these markets. I'll bet you Mexico City doesn't get a whole lot of targeted advertising from American publishers. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that the cost to advertise there would be very low compared to what you're used to. And they are people who are hungry for English language content. So the international market and the potential there is something that's really exciting me. And actually, if we talk about somebody who Findaway Voices isn't distributing to right now, which is Storytel, they have such an aggressive and interesting business plan, or business tactic, which is they're targeting all of the markets that Audible isn't in and doesn't have an established audiobook market. And they are buying up rights. They are making exclusive content. They are highly subsidizing books to get people hooked on audiobooks. And they are building new audio markets where they've never existed before. And they're doing so very aggressively. And it's really interesting to see a company growing at their size and scale and aggressiveness, targeting international customers. So I would encourage everyone to think outside the US and Canada for their marketing. And I think that there is a lot more exciting stuff to come as people start experimenting.
Nice. It's very Wild Westy. It's like, can you get out there and homestead, stake your claim on whatever you can, and then go panning for gold? I don't know. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Okay, so I feel like we have got a ton of good stuff in there, which will probably lead to about 5 times as many questions out of all of that, which we will follow up with people as much as possible through the Creative Academy, and hopefully through another interview down the line as well, once some of this other stuff that you can't talk about yet is public. But is there anything else you'd like to leave our authors with as a last sort of word of wisdom or anything?
Experiment. Nobody has the definitive solution for audiobook success, but there are so many tools and so much opportunity right now that if you're the one who experiment and figure it out first, there's a lot of potential there. So just try new things, ask people what's working, think of new parallels to what's worked in the ebook industry and where the audiobook industry is in that curve. Like if you think about BookBub and Written Word Media and these Bargain Booksy, all of those lists that's helping discovery outside of retailers in the ebook space right now. As more and more control happens with pricing and discounts in other platforms like Authors Direct or like Google Play and some other big name retailers who are in the a la carte retail game, there are going to be a lot of opportunities to experiment with highly discounted books to millions of readers looking for an impulse buy. That and 100 other things. So just experiment, try things, and share your learnings with me so I know it's working.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to come and talk to us and share all of your insider knowledge. And we look forward to a brave new world of audiobooks for all of us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for being a part of this Creative Academy event. If you're not a member yet, join us today and unlock a wealth of resources, masterclasses, feedback opportunities, and online community events designed to help you reach the next step in your writing journey. No matter what stage you're at, we've got a helping hand to guide you along the way. Check out our free resource room if you'd like to get a taste of how we can help you reach your writing and publishing goals. Thank you for bringing us along on your writing and publishing journey, and Donna, Eileen, and I hope we'll see you around the Creative Academy soon.